In this tutorial, we will see how to perform a simple regression forecast with the intercept, slope, and correlation coefficient given to you. As you no doubt recall from statistics, the correlation coefficient measures the strength of the linear relationship between the dependent and independent variable. In forecasting, that measurement tells us the strength of the relationship between the period and demand. In other words, it tells us how good simple regression will be at forecasting demand. Again, as you recall from statistics, the correlation coefficient goes from -1 to +1. The sign just indicates if demand is increasing or decreasing. Ignoring the sign, the closer it is to 1, the better the model, and the closer it is to 0, the weaker the model. The correlation coefficient is useful in understanding the forecasting model, and I will give it to you in these problems. However, it is not used in any of the calculations, so it is just informational. Once you have the intercept and slope, the forecast for any period is just the intercept plus the slope times the number of that period. That's all there is to it. The intercept and slope do not change period to period. For the data shown on the slide, we wish to compute a simple regression forecast. Note that the intercept is 122.4, the slope is 5.09, and the correlation coefficient is 0.9753. Also note that this is the same data we have used for prior forecasting examples. The correlation coefficient of 0.9753 tells us this is an excellent forecasting model since it is very close to 1. As discussed before, this value is not used in the calculations themselves. As we've said before, the forecast for any period is just the intercept plus the slope times that period number. F1 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 1 equals 127.49. F2 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 2 equals 132.58. F3 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 3 equals 137.67. F4 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 4 equals 142.76. F5 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 5 equals 147.85. F6 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 6 equals 152.94. F7 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 7 equals 158.03. F8 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 8 equals 163.12. F9 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 9 equals 168.21. F10 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 10 equals 173.30. F11 equals 122.4 plus 5.09 times 11 equals 178.39. This slide shows a chart of the results. The actual values are in blue and the forecast values in orange. Notice that the regression forecast graphs as a straight line. That will always be the case. As you may have noticed, this is the first technique we have demonstrated where it is clear how we can go more than one period into the future. All we have to do is plug in a 20, for example, into the formula and we have a forecast for period 20. Of course, the further into the future you go, the less confidence you have in the resulting forecast. We talked about moving averages being a smoothing technique, and they are. However, regression gives you much more smoothing since the forecast line is always a straight line. Finally, as you might recall from statistics, regression is easily biased by outliers. That means you must use it with care if there are unusually high or low data points. For the data shown on the slide, we wish to compute a simple regression forecast. Note that the intercept is 236.33, the slope is 13.19, and the correlation coefficient is 0.9976. Also note that this is the same data we use for the trend-adjusted exponential smoothing bonus problems. The correlation coefficient of 0.9976 tells us this is an excellent forecasting model since it is very close to 1. In fact, it is even better than the last model. As we discussed before, this value is not used in the calculations themselves. Since you've seen an example already, let me suggest that you pause the video and try to work this problem on your own. Once you're done, you can use the video to check your work and spot any mistakes you might have made. As we've said before, the forecast for any period is just the intercept plus the slope times the period number. F1 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 1 equals 249.52. F2 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 2 equals 262.71. F3 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 3 equals 275.90. F4 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 4 equals 289.09. F5 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 5 equals 302.28. F6 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 6 equals 315.47. F7 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 7 equals 328.66. F8 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 8 equals 341.85. F9 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 9 equals 355.04. F10 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 10 equals 368.23. F11 equals 236.33 plus 13.19 times 11 equals 381.42. This slide shows a chart of the results. The actual values are in blue and the forecast values in orange. Notice how close the actuals and forecasted values are. Don't forget, there are tutorials on finding the intercept, slope, and correlation coefficient manually and using Excel. Be sure to watch the appropriate ones if your instructor will not be giving you these values or if you will need to find them in order to do the homework. If you found that this video helped you with your operations management problem, please consider liking the video and even subscribing to the channel.